Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and we're absolutely thrilled today to have back with us Dalton Rice, City Manager of the City of Kerrville. Dalton, welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, appreciate being back. I'm trying to think of when the last time I was here. It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, but we've had a lot in between
We have.
visits. We're recording this in late September, and Dalton, one of the reasons that we asked you to come was to really kind of tell us where you and the city are as we record this podcast and what steps or some of the efforts you and the team are leading to try to help us move forward. I've heard you speak, obviously, at Rotary and some other events where you talked about 3 phases: rescue and recovery, debris removal, and then long-term recovery. And as we transition to that, sort of where are we?
Yeah, no, it's kind of going on those 3 things. Search and recovery, that's still ongoing. We still have 2 missing people. And so we're trying to get as much closure as we can for those families. And so we're working in partnership with the state, of course. Debris management is a big one that's been ongoing for a while now across the whole county. I think we're up to about 1.3 million cubic yards of debris right now. We don't really know what the end in sight is going to be, but I think we're all hesitant to throw a number out there. And so that's ongoing, and we'll include rebuilding into some of that. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then the economic recovery side. And so small businesses, I think across the whole county, and we had an update last night. There's about 70 businesses or so that have been impacted in some way across the county. About 20 of those are in the city of Kerrville. And that could be from short-term rentals to service industry to hotels to anything. So we're working in concert with our economic development crews or teams on making sure that our small businesses and our businesses have everything that they need. And then on the rebuilding side, some of our big priorities that we're focused on is the parks. Our park system obviously took a big hit, especially with Louise Hayes Park, Guadalupe Park. So we've had a lot of gracious donors out there that are wanting to help us rebuild. And so Guadalupe Park was our first all abilities playground. It ended up getting pretty heavily damaged during the flood. So that's one of our big priorities, to get some kids back out playing. We are in the process of reimagining Louise Hayes Park. And so what do we want to do a little bit different, since we unfortunately have kind of a clean slate? And so the opportunity in there is really good. And so we're going to take a look at how we can reimagine that. We're getting the river trail and everything cleaned up so we can get folks back on the river trail and enjoying the scenery and enjoying it. The river trail did not get damaged, so it was really good. So that's kind of like a 300,000 foot view, but those are probably some of the big priorities we have going on right now.
So what if maybe I could flip it down to the constituency of you as the city manager, of course, as the citizens of Kerrville? What's the sort of bubbling up from people that they want to see, or have you already taken that into account with the projects you've just delineated?
Yeah, a lot of that has been taken into account of what we've already talked about. Those are the big priorities. The businesses have all kind of reached out in some way. We actually have a very proactive economic development team between Kerr EDC and the city's economic development manager. So a lot of proactive steps have taken. We've taken a lot of proactive steps on the parks and recreation system, but the park system is what we get the most questions on. When is the river trail going to open? When is the river going to be back open? When is the parks going to be back open? Those are probably some of the biggest questions that we get right now.
In terms of the home putting people who lost their homes in temporary housing and then reconstruction of homes, where are we in that phase?
That is a really good question. And when it comes to the long-term recovery group, Kerr Together is really focused on the long-term recovery piece. Once you hit the long-term recovery piece, in a way, the city is not as big of a part of it anymore. So from the city standpoint, and maybe loosely from the county standpoint, we're there to help with the permitting process. We're helped to make sure that they get all the right stuff that they need to be able to rebuild their homes. There's certain requirements that FEMA has and regulations building in the floodplain. Fortunately, in the city of Kerrville, there's not a lot of folks that are going to be impacted by that, because we fall under the floodplain regulations anyways. But the long-term recovery group and their case managers and the different subcommittees in the task force, those are really going to be integral in making sure people get back into their homes to get the funding. You really want to kind of, in a way, keep some of the governmental institutions out of that, which is why the long-term recovery group is really driven by the community and a lot of members of the community.
One of my observations about Kerrville, I moved here in 21 from Houston, and one of the observations was when I looked at city government, I saw obviously a public side, public sector, but I also saw private businesses and individuals, I don't want to say in partnership, but certainly working in concert on a variety of issues. And I've seen that earlier today. We recorded a podcast with Kerr together, and
Mhm.
that seemed to me to be as fine an example as I've seen in Kerrville. I was wondering if in your prior work in other cities or other towns in Texas, was that typical, or is this something that you think is more unique to Kerrville, this partnership or working together?
No, it's definitely not unique to Kerrville. I will say, just because we're a little biased, Kerrville's going to do it better than everybody else. But no, when it comes to the long-term recovery group side, it's always about a partnership. You got to, whether that is during disaster, whether that is just in our everyday, day-to-day lives, public-private partnerships or partnerships with other organizations and entities is what is needed. Governments cannot survive on their own, as they shouldn't, and there has to be that symbiotic concert with other organizations, and it's especially important during a disaster. And we're very fortunate to have the organizations, the nonprofits, and the community and the volunteer base to be able to do something. I will say that, and maybe this is not necessarily unique, but I think it's something that we can brag on as a community. We are really far ahead of the disaster recovery game. Typically, debris management and some of these other operational components don't happen until later on, or they would have started kind of later on. Within 36 hours, we already had economic development folks out talking with the small businesses right after the disaster, and that's pretty incredible. So that weekend, we were already working with small businesses and some addressing some of the needs that they had. Within a couple weeks, not even, we were already having discussions on debris management and what is it going to take in order to get the debris and everything cleaned up. And so we were, with all the experience that we had going into this with different disasters and just some of the city experience, and then of course the state experience, we were able to stay ahead of the paperwork, stay ahead of the debris, stay ahead of the economic recovery. And I think that's a testament to our community for sure.
You have a city to run in the middle
Yeah.
of all this, and we've seen multiple issues over the past week or two that I don't want to say are routine, but things that you would typically see in front of a city council or discussion in the newspaper or report from yourself or some members of your executive leadership team. How have you been able to have the city run on everything else
Yeah.
in addition to everything else?
I think that, to sum it up very simplistically, we have an amazing team that knows their job. They're the experts in their different fields across all 350 of our team members. What we did strategically, I think really after about the first week and a half of the disaster, we kind of did some split teams. The city did a lot of the EOC operations. Most of our staff were the ones staffing it alongside with county sheriff's folks. But we played a pretty significant role in the emergency operations center operations, if you will. About I'd say a week and a half after, I met with Kim Meismer, who's one of my assistant city managers, and I sat down with our executive team and said, "Hey, we're gonna start doing some split team operations." And so, really, with after the first week and a half, I kicked Kim back over to City Hall as kind of the interim city manager to make sure that we continued to do day-to-day operations while I was navigating the politics and working over at the EOC. And so then I started splitting some time up, and we had a very smooth transition with that. So we were able to maintain our day-to-day operations, not just from the leadership side, but again, a true testament of what our team brings to the table and just the hard work and the dedication that they put in every single day. And so we were able to really navigate that from an operational standpiece and then from an administrative standpiece as well.
You mentioned the EOC. Was that something Kerrville had a plan for that they could basically either pull off the shelf or implement in such a disaster as we had?
Yeah, so both the city and the county, and it's really actually a county document, but we have our hazard mitigation plan, which kind of outlines a lot of this. And we redo those. Typically, you redo them about every 5 years, give or take. I think we are in the process of about to redo ours. And so it really identified locations for the Emergency Operations Center. This event, we started off as kind of a command post at our police department. And then in concert with the state, as we started scaling up operations, we were looking at other areas. And we identified that the Ag Barn or the Hill Country Youth Event Center was the best location for everything. By 6 p.m. of July 4th, that same day, we had already scaled up our Emergency Operations Center into a unified command model very quickly.
How were you able to help direct just literally the thousands or even millions of dollars that came in the way of donations? Did the city have a part in directing that to their appropriate charitable entities, or how did that work?
Yeah, so I can't really you say the city has to can take all credit on that one. We had a lot of our staff and our team working through it, but it was a partnership with the state. It was a partnership with the city, with the county. And really, when we look at the EOC, it falls under a unified command system. And so there's multiple agencies, multiple organizations from local, state, and federal that are all working together to communicate. And in the Emergency Operations Center, we have our different planning groups, operations planning, logistics planning. And so through our partnerships with the state, we were able to put in volunteer coordinators or the right people to do those VOADs. So very early on, we knew that was going to be a problem just from our experiences in disasters. Volunteers and donations are a disaster in and of itself, because if you don't have it organized, it'll creep up on you. And within the first, I think, 2 or 3 weeks, we had over 18,000 registered volunteers, over 130,000 hours of volunteer hours. And so we were able to get that very early on. And we still have some challenges. That's something that the state's even looking at addressing, is making sure that you can get a handle on the volunteer side. We even still had issues of volunteers that were going out there and doing their own thing, which poses a huge danger, because if we have what's called an incident within an incident, that could pose a danger if the river starts rising again and we can't communicate with these folks. But yes, we did tackle the volunteer stuff very early on, and we did tackle the donation piece very early on.
We had responses of volunteers from literally across the globe, both in terms of money and actually physically coming to Kerrville. Were you able to meet with some of the folks that came here?
Oh, absolutely. I spent a lot of time meeting with, I know we had 3 different countries. I know we had Mexico, we had Israel, and God, there was one other one.
So the Czech Republic?
I think it was the Czech Republic, yes, because I did meet with the Czech liaison that came through. So yes, thank you for that one. So Czech. So we had 3 different countries. We had 7 different federal agencies, over 80 different local volunteers. But yes, we were able to meet with all of them. I spent a lot of time more on the political side, navigating some of the dignitaries that were coming in, working with the different state, federal representatives that were coming in. And so we had a lot of people come through the emergency operation room doors.
What was it like from a security perspective to have a U.S. president come?
I've been in a couple situations where we've had a president of the United States come, and the security side, obviously it's very logistically challenged. It was very good working with the Secret Service and with all of the White House representatives as well, the White House staff. It was very smooth. This one was, I think, more smooth than some of the other ones that I've been to, especially having kind of been a part of the process. And yeah, it was good. I think we made some stuff happen very quickly across the board. We were able to accommodate pretty much all of their asks and some of their security requirements. And I think they also found that rewarding as well, that we were able to navigate both that and the security side and a lot of their accommodations while we're also navigating one of the worst disasters in Texas history.
How did the state liaison with you? Was there a primary agency you worked with, or was it multiple agencies? What was that relationship like?
The primary one we work with is Texas Department of Emergency Management, or TDEM. So Chief Nemkid is over TDEM. He's appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate and the House. And so that was the primary point of contact. But within each of that, we worked with DPS, we work with game wardens, we work with the Texas National Guard or the National Guard Bureau. And so we met with every single one of those entities who have their own people in charge. And this was a very law enforcement driven search and rescue operation. We work with Texas Task Force 1. And while Chief Kidd was kind of our main point of contact, we had multiple points of contact that we were in communication with on a daily basis or multiple times a day.
What about the organizations within the city of Kerrville? And I'll maybe start with the churches that really took the lead in bringing people in, trying to distribute food and clothes as needed. How did you liaise with them?
Mostly through our volunteer coordinators or through our economic development arm, being able to get out there and communicate with them. Our state partners through TDEM, they have different task force or different experts within those fields, and each one of them would go out there and help also coordinate and liaise with that. So we would typically have a state representative alongside a local person as well that could go out and communicate. Once we identified, especially on the volunteer side, the church side, the nonprofit side, once we kind of identified our volunteer kind of coordinators, those were the people that kind of navigated those. And then they would really only talk to us at the EOC as if they had any issues, or if we needed to change something logistically, or if they needed some resource or something, then they would kind of communicate back with us. But yeah, we had volunteer coordinators to navigate all of those.
Did you have a primary liaison on the federal side as well?
For the most part, we did that through our state reps. We talked with Secretary Nome, and I had talked quite a few times about just different things, mostly on the FEMA side, because FEMA was there very early on. Even though they didn't have a visible presence, they were there very quickly. And so we worked a lot with our FEMA partners very early on, but there was never one point of contact. We would typically either navigate it through the state or communicate through the state, or directly with the different secretaries from Small Business Administration, Department of Homeland Security, or any of the other number of federal agencies that were on location.
You mentioned navigating the political side of things. And one of the roles of a city manager or a mayor is to provide information to the government authority above us and also to citizens. What was that role like for you?
Kind of having taken on the EOC just as a whole, not just for the city of Kerrville, but also for the county, I worked with kind of what we call the policy group. And so on a daily, actually multiple times a day, I would meet with all the commissioners, I'd meet with the judge, I'd meet with the sheriff, I'd meet with our city council members. Everybody played a very active role in it. And so I would send them daily updates on things that were happening in the EOC, all the way from operations through debris management, through economic recovery, any major changes that were kind of going on. I even included the city of Ingram, had points of contact over there as well, and the county attorney. So there's a lot of folks that we kept in the loop, plus our executive team as well. So I spent a lot of time either communicating with them directly over the phone or through an email, just to give them updates multiple times a day, especially very early on.
The economic damage or injury to the county affects the city of Kerrville as well. Is Kerr Together the group that's really going to try to put together a bigger package than simply the city? So what I'm trying to get at is the summer camps are a huge economic part of Kerr County and leading to economic impact in Kerrville. Can we think through having maybe a unified approach to that issue?
So there is nothing to think through on that one, Tom. It is a unified approach. So Kerr Together is for all of the county. It is not just for the city of Kerrville. City of Kerrville is just a very small component between the Kerr EDC under the direction of the board and Todd Bach, who's the executive director, along with Teresa Metcalf, the deputy executive director. They're navigating a lot of the administrative economic recovery side or the long-term recovery group side for across the entire county, not just the city. We do have some components of it that are focused on the city, but this is a joint effort across the entire county. And however we as a city can help support those initiatives across the whole county, we will be there.
What do you see as maybe your 2 or 3 biggest challenges through the Q4 of 2025?
I think we got through some of the biggest hurdles. I think a lot of the challenges that we're going to face is really just that slowing down effect. Everything kind of slows down. We're going to start getting into the holiday season. Mental health is always going to be something that we have to focus on over the next year, especially as we start getting into the holiday season. And then when we start hitting into the new year, the city got through the budget, county got through the budget. And so those were going to be some big hurdles going into really finishing up fiscal Q4. Once we go into October 1, we'll start our new fiscal year. And it's really, I think, just navigating the uncertainties, or kind of a wait and see game. We don't know what's going to happen, or we know it's going to happen, but we don't know how much it's going to cost us. So as we dive into public assistance, fixing infrastructure that needs to be fixed, how much are we going to have to pay for that? How much is it going to cost? We know there's going to be a 25% match that we have to do with FEMA. We don't have a dollar amount for that. We don't know how much lost value we have officially. And so over the next 3 to 6 months, it's really going to be starting to really narrow down how much damage do we have? What's the lost value that we're actually anticipating, or that we actually are going to realize? And then as we start identifying these projects, how much is it going to cost us that we're going to have to figure out how to get that funding from, or tap into our fund balance?
One of the things you just said struck me, and it was the holiday season. I recall in the year of COVID, the holiday season, everyone just seemed to have a breath let out and let's celebrate the holiday season. Do you think we'll maybe have that here in Kerrville?
I think so. It's my own personal, I guess, experience is we still haven't really had that. I still haven't really had that breath of relief yet. And so we're still kind of getting everybody into this, in a way, steady state. Getting through last night, or getting through our budget in September, that was a breath of fresh air, at least a small breath of fresh air. But yeah, I think everybody's looking forward to the holiday season where we can. I think the community is going to continue to be strong in this, and we're going to continue to come together. And so I'm looking forward to that.
I said this to you before, but I want to say it to you on the record that I think you're the right man at the right place at the right time for this job. So I wanted to thank you for that.
I appreciate it. It's just my job. I know that sounds simple, but it is just my job.